You're listening to a podcast of spurious morality.
Yeah, that'll do. Oh, sorry, I should be more enthusiastic. Fantastic. Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnstone, and with me this week I have Connor.
Hello.
And I have Mansoor.
Hello.
And we are returning to the Ninth Doctor Adventures. We're going to look at some of our favourite releases from the second season of Big Finish releases. However, since we last did one of these episodes, we have had a little bit of news that we've not actually talked about yet on this podcast. So Billy Piper and Christopher Eccleston are doing a series of Ninth Doctor adventures together. We are getting the Ninth Doctor and Rose. I was not expecting this at all. I genuinely thought Christopher Eccleston had kind of gone on potentially permanent hiatus from Big Finish. Like he'd done his lockdown recordings, he'd made his mortgage payments, and that was it. He was on, at the very least, extended leave, but nope, it's barely been a year, and here we are. We are getting more Ninth Doctor, and this time he is with Rose. It's great that Big Finish have managed to make this happen. So just anything that you guys want to say about it. Connor, you go first.
I do wonder, because if you remember what he said when he left, and this has only just occurred to me while we're sitting here, when he left Big Finish, he said, "This isn't a goodbye, it's an au revoir." And I wonder, was this in the works then? Like, did he know he was going to come back to do this fourth series with Billy Piper? I think it's excellent. Rose was such a... You could really feel Rose's absence in the earlier Ninth Doctor adventures. I think I really enjoy them, but I think they lacked a regular companion. And even listening to the trailers out now for the first one, because it's coming out next month at the time of recording, the trailer's out now for Snare. And even listening to that, you feel a different energy to even Eccleston's performance having a companion to bounce off against. He was always very adamant that he wasn't going to come back, or he wasn't going to do anything with a new companion other than Billy Piper, unless Billy Piper came back. So I think it's wonderful. I'm really, really excited because Rose was it was my introduction to Doctor Who. I watched that series very religiously back in 2005, and I think everyone feels that the Ninth Doctor era was far too short. So I'm really delighted that we're going to get these stories to expand on it now. I think it's fantastic. Pun absolutely intended. We know what the first story is. Jackie Tyler's back. And I think this has come out in this month's Doctor Who magazine that... I don't know whether I should say if this is news or not, because I don't think Big Finish have announced it, but there's a certain returning villain that just makes me... I know everyone says about Big Finish, riding on nostalgia and this stuff, but nostalgia is good when it appeals to me, and I'm delighted to hear that villain is going to be in it, in these new audios.
Seeing as Doctor Who magazine will have been out 2 weeks by the time this goes online, it's Autons. Let's just say what it is.
It's the Autons.
It's Autons.
Yeah, yes, as I said, nostalgia's good when it appeals directly to me.
Yes. No, it's good. I think it actually makes a lot of sense to have the Ninth Doctor encounter the Nestines / Autons again, and Rose as well. Because
Do we think it'll
in
be like a
this,
direct sequel to Rose? Like, will it be them versus the dregs of the Auton of the Nestine invasion force from Rose, or will it be a new scenario? I wonder.
no idea. Actually, I personally I wouldn't have it as a Rose sequel. I'd just have it as Rose knows who the villain are, and it's still relatively early days
Mm,
in Rose's travels. So I quite like the
yes.
idea of sort of that. She gets to be the expert before series 2 when she's the expert every week. So yeah, that could be quite fun. Mansoor, anything you want to add about this?
Yeah, I think it's really welcome, and like one of the things I really felt listening to series 2 of the audios was, that moment in Rose where they meet for the first time, and his first line is "run," and it's like that moment of introducing the Doctor. It starts to feel like they are forced to like redo that in every single episode, and it's kind of cool the first few times, and then listening to all of series 2 back to back, it starts to become a bit repetitive. So just on that practical point of avoiding that, I think is going to be good. But also just to have those two back together who started it all in 2005, that's really welcome, and also interesting that Billy Piper is possibly, technically, probably the current Doctor. So I doubt they will do anything with that, because I imagine that, well, it seems like Billy Piper's appearance on TV recently was quite a late in the day thing, so the Big Finish contracts were probably in place well before that happened. But I'm curious if they do like sneak in some sort of reference. They have done stuff with the curator and that in other stories, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm also curious about like where in the run they will set it, and I'm guessing like towards the end of series 1, TV series 1 is out because Jack's going to be around at
I
that
think
point.
they've said this whole run of audios is going to be set immediately after Father's Day.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because there's a bit of a gap there, and that's when Rose's like first mini arc wraps up. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense for squeezing some new stuff in.
Realistically, it's the latest possible point they can do, isn't it,
Yeah,
as
you can't
well?
go much further than that. I mean, could you do well? Yeah, because then Jack, it's Jack arrives after that, doesn't he? Is that the next episode?
Yeah, Empty
Father's Day.
Child.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it's all set to be good. I like the release pattern as well. One episode every couple of months, but then we get a 13th Doctor episode in the month we don't get a 9th Doctor episode. So it's kind of making me feel like the monthly range is back. It's not quite, but it's in that vein, and I like that. Or
yeah. I forgot that for
yeah,
the 13th Doctor. I forgot they were doing monthly single disc releases, and then I got it in the post recently, and yeah, it's like kind of going back to the very start of Big Finish with the Benny monthly stories, and then the Doctor Who ones.
I think that's a really great sort of. I don't know. I don't know how deliberate it is. I'm assuming it's deliberate, because it is lining up so well. But I think it's a really fantastic idea to alternate between two new series Doctors each month for the next 2 years at the very least. I think that's a fantastic plan.
just listeners at home who have started playing a drink every time Connor says fantastic type game. Stop now.
It's
You
not.
won't
It's not
survive.
even deliberate. I didn't even realize I'd done it that
It's like you're not even going to make it through 20 minutes. Just stop.
time.
He doesn't actually
It
say it
just
that
shows
much.
how
Yeah, like
formative the Ninth Doctor era was.
I'm trying to
No,
think.
I
Like
think Connor has said fantastic more times this
more times
episode
than
than
next.
Christopher Eccleston has ever said it, even outside of Doctor Who. Shall we move on to existing Ninth Doctor adventures, then should we talk about our picks for Series 2?
Yeah.
And we're starting with the first episode of the series, which is Station to Station. So I have talked about this one in quite a bit of detail before. We actually did a bonus episode on this one when it was very first released, which was a good few years ago now. So there's nothing I can really say that I've not said before. Apart from that, it's a wonderful episode. It's nice and atmospheric. It's really interesting villain. Like we're playing with concepts that the Ninth Doctor era never played with on TV here. And it works. It's very enjoyable. It's a very strong episode. When it first came out, I picked it as my favourite from the set. However, I think my opinion has shifted on second listen. I actually think my favourite from this set is now Auld Lang Syne. Not that I think any less of Station to Station. I just think that I perhaps didn't appreciate Auld Lang Syne as much as I should have done. Maybe I was having an off day when I listened to it or something like that. But yeah, Station to Station. You go first, Connor.
It's one that has grown on me over time. I remember back when it came out, everyone was saying, "Oh, this is the highlight from the box set," and I remember people really singing its praises. I wasn't that keen on it the first time round, but I've heard it a couple of times since, and it has grown on me. I think it veers into the slightly more whimsical fairy tale version of Doctor Who that sometimes comes out, and that's not it's not my favorite side of Doctor Who, but it's a really solid wee story. I think it's really wonderful when towards the end all the characters are gathered round and they're remembering their own lives. It's the moment when their trains sort of come in and they get to go off, back to their lives again. The Doctor's pretty sure they're all doomed, and then it turns out they're not. They can go back to their lives. That's a really lovely wee moment. So I definitely would say it has grown on me over time. I enjoyed it more this time around than on previous listens. But I'm definitely going to single out Outline Sang as my favourite from this set every single time. I think yeah, it's fair to say.
Anything you want to add about Station to Station, Mansoor?
Nothing much. I think like it works because going back to like Girl Interrupted in the first series, a lot of my favourite Ninth Doctor audios are the ones that are a bit more grounded in reality, and Station to Station has a bit of both. It has like quite real characters drawn from everyday context, but then a lot of more fantastical stuff going on. But for that reason, like I would say, Auld Lang Syne is the one that stands out more to me. Again, it has time travel and stuff going on, but that one feels the most kind of like ordinary people being pulled into a weird adventure.
The scene towards the end where the Doctor and the Gru are trying to guess each other's real names is really, really good. It sort of just boils down to the Doctor versus the villain, and it's so good to hear that sparring of words between them. There's some really cracking lines in there. I think that's a great scene.
Yeah, it's always fun when the Doctor has a good old word off with a villain. It doesn't happen that often. Well, we'll jump to. I feel like we've sort of brushed over Station to Station there, but like I say, we've spodcasted about it before, and I think we've all agreed then that the highlight of this set is Auld Lang Syne. So let's move on to that. Not really told from the Doctor's perspective, which is a nice twist. He's not absent from the story. He's in it quite a bit. It's certainly not a Doctor Light episode, but he kind of drops in as this mysterious character into a character or a set of characters' lives, and that's something that has been done well. It's something that's not been done so well. It is done well here, and we are playing with some really good, like real feeling characters. I think what Mansoor said about it being sort of very people focused. I think the Ninth Doctor era was very people focused, and we see first humanity's first contact with aliens from the perspective of a council estate in London, in Aliens in London, and that kind of thing. And I sort of really like that about the era. I don't think any other era has done real people as well as the Ninth Doctor era. It's probably because most stories were set on Earth, but yeah, it works quite well. So we're introduced to this family. They have their sort of dynamic. You've got the characters you'd expect to have, the sort of the grumpy great aunt, and the other character and her sort of new boyfriend, and all this kind of thing. We're not dealing with extraordinary characters here. They're very normal, real, grounded people, and it's the Doctor that takes them away from that reality. I love the idea of playing with New Year as a theme. We get a lot of Christmas specials on TV and at Big Finish. We get loads of Christmas episodes. New Year's a little less explored, and I think they use the concept of New Year as a point in time really well here, and it's played with quite nicely. It's just a nice, strong episode about real people and the Doctor kind of interrupting their world over a series of New Years. So, Connor, do you want to talk to us about Auld Lang Syne?
Like I said, this was for that first set in series two. This is my highlight. It's possibly, certainly would be one of my highlights for the entire Ninth Doctor range at Big Finish. This is I always this it's always going to be a special story for me because I heard this in the cinema. I heard this at Big Finish Day in the cinema at Derby Quad about a month before it was actually released. So that was quite a cool experience, and it has always stuck in my head for that reason. So it's quite funny when an episode comes out on release day and you're like, oh, it's the second time I've heard this. But it's a really fantastic story, as Tim Foley stories tend to be. There, I've done it again. It's a brilliant story. As you say, the New Year's connection is really underexplored with Doctor Who, and it's great that they have to make use of that each year. That it's this particular day and it happens for this reason, that this family keeps coming back. It's a really well developed family. They do sort of focus on Mandy and Bet. It's I think Bet's her aunt, isn't that right? Um, those two are sort of the most developed. They're the stars as it is, but it's you can get into the whole time travel aspect of it. It's the house is a dying TARDIS, that sort of thing. I don't ever think they say it's a TARDIS, but it's very clear that it is a TARDIS. Um, it's the bit towards the end where Mandy meets Bet again. From Mandy's point of view, Bet has died. The previous year, and from Bet's point of view, it's her last year. It's her last time in the house. And it's the bit where Mandy meets her again and is really trying hard not to let Bet know or let Bet realize, but Bet obviously does realize. She knows herself that she's going to die, and she figures out that Mandy has come back from the future. It's a really affecting scene, and I think it's beautiful, that it's Mandy's chance to say goodbye that she didn't actually get in real life. I think it's a really beautiful scene that has always stuck in my head. So I love this story to bits. I do try and listen to it every new year, and I like that it does. I really love the ending as well. What the Doctor does his usual fireworks display that he puts on for the family each year, but before it goes into the credits, it sort of breaks down into the character singing Auld Lang Syne, and it's a really nice way to end the year. So I do try and fit it in every New Year's Eve, and get a wee bit of a Doctor Who New Year special each year. So I really, really enjoy it. I love it.
Yeah, it totally works, and it's the fireworks firing off Artron energy or something like that. There's a story reason for those fireworks, isn't there? It's not just the Doctor's
Yes,
doing a
yeah,
firework display.
I think it's to do with the dying TARDIS, the house dying, and the Doctor trying to ease its passage. I think, but it's a lovely image. seeing that shooting up out of the TARDIS lamp into the sky above the house while the family watch. It's really great imagery, actually.
Yeah, it's a really nice story. Anything you want to add, Mansoor?
Not much, but I think that scene um, where she goes back, was it a year or a couple of years, like to that was one that stood out to me as well, and it's like an example of um, when a writer isn't afraid to just really foreground the supporting characters and not have the Doctor in every scene. It's kind of like the New Adventures novels did this a lot, and I think like some of the more interesting audios do it as well, where like sometimes the Doctor becomes a supporting character in the story, and in this one he is very much that in terms of like structurally the way he's popping in and out of different time zones, and really your lead character in a sense is not the Doctor. Um, and I think that scene was like the kind of ultimate example of that, of like this is who the story is about. It doesn't always have to be the Doctor with all these other people being peripheral around him.
I like it when Doctor Who uses the Doctor as that sort of. I mean, it's the sort of stereotypical caretaker in the creepy house type
Mm.
character, isn't it? That every children's novel ever seems to have one of the kindly old man kind of role, but the Doctor in that role works really, really well, and certainly underexplored on TV. Something like The Doctor, Widow and the Wardrobe played with it for its first sort of 10-15 minutes, very much before turning it to a normal Doctor Who story. But
Like the starts
it's,
of eras, like I mean, like we talked about Rose, and there's a sense there where like you follow Rose, and the Doctor is this character that she's discovering, and even like an unearthly child, you could see that as Barbara and Ian being the leads, and they're discovering this weird old man and being kidnapped by him, um, and I think that was kind of the intention at points, wasn't it, for Ian to be the sort of action hero lead, and so you can kind of see it at different points, but I think the pattern of Doctor Who over the years is very much fallen into. He's in every scene.
yeah, it quickly evolved in the Hartnell era to be about the Doctor, and it's kind
Yeah,
of not looked back since. And that's the right decision. It's Doctor Who, it should be about the Doctor, but occasionally taking the Doctor out of it and seeing him through the eyes of a normal person, it does work. It works really well. Yeah, enjoyable story, very good. And like I say, I don't know why I didn't fully appreciate it the first time round, but I really, really, really enjoyed it on this re-listen. It's become a highlight of the range for me, I think, whereas I wouldn't have considered it one before. But let's have a chat about the first story in the second set then, which is Salvation 9. I was so I re-listened to these fairly recently, but I was kind of reading up before just to kind of remind myself again, and it dawned on me: this is How to Train Your Dragon with Sontarans. That's what this story is, and that's brilliant. um, it's basically good Sontarans, and we have to convince the humans not to destroy them. And the Doctor goes off on a mission to find bad Sontarans to say these good Sontarans are not Sontarans, to save them. And it's a good idea. Like, I think at this point, at some point down the line, pretty much every major Doctor Who villain has had a good version. We've met good-ish Daleks. We've met good Cybermen who have broken through emotional inhibitors programming or whatever. We've met good Ice Warriors in Curse of Peladon. We've even had a good incarnation of the Master. So it wasn't too much of a surprise that we got this with Sontarans as well. I think it's done very, very well, though. I think it's a great little story, and it's like the rest of the Ninth Doctor adventures. It doesn't do anything sort of big or wonderful or canon changing. This is just the Ninth Doctor meeting Sontarans, and at least it's something a bit different. It's not just a base under siege with Sontarans or something like that. it plays with them. It gets the balance right. Sontarans have become a bit comedy. Some would argue they've always been a bit comedy, but either way, you definitely do get the sort of comedy element of Sontarans here. But it's a nice, solid, serious story, and it's just good to explore what happens when the Doctor meets a good Sontaran. I like that. Connor, talk to us about Salvation 9.
I think with a lot of Big Finish, you do sometimes get the sense that the Doctor can be interchangeable. Like you're listening to this story and thinking this is great, but it's just generic Doctor Who. It's not been written with any specific incarnation in mind. They've just happened to assign this Doctor to it. I don't think that's the case with Salvation 9. I think it's very definitely written specifically with the Ninth Doctor in mind. So I remember there being an article in Doctor Who magazine that sort of went through all the Doctor's favourite monsters, and Eccleston picked out the Sontarans um, as his favourite villain. So I'm glad that they did a story with the Ninth Doctor and the Sontarans, because the Ninth Doctor is written, particularly in these, as in the TV series as well, obviously. But I do think there's a lot of stories where it goes in. The Ninth Doctor is a very deliberate, ardent pacifist, because he has had the recent experience of the Time War behind him. And here he is meeting the ultimate warriors, and even he goes into this, the first time he sees the Sontaran, he's like, oh, I surrender, don't shoot, sort of thing, and he's trying to, or he has gone in with the sort of stereotypical warrior Sontaran mind, and then he gets his eyes open and realizes actually these ones are different, and he completely falls in love with them. It's really, really, it's a nice dynamic he has with them then, where he completely adores them, and it sort of gives him a bit of, I think it sort of restores that sort of, if he does come into this as a jaded warrior, it's maybe sort of slightly restores his faith in the universe a bit, that he has met these Sontarans who have rejected that stereotype and have become, a peaceful agrarian society. I think it's class. The Sontarans themselves are good fun. The good ones do sort of veer towards that comedy, but they're not. It's not slapstick in the way that sometimes the Sontarans have been treated in more recent years. They're just slightly bumbling, harmless, funny little guys, and it works really, really well. Um, it's really good seeing them go up against the quote unquote proper Sontarans, and see them encountering it, and how they. I think there's a little bit of tension as to whether or not they'll fall back into their old habits, and they ultimately don't. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it treats the Sontarans really well, and I like that it seems to have been written specifically with the Ninth Doctor in mind. Because as I say, I don't think you always get that with Big Finish.
I think it's definitely good to have the sort of just post-Time War Doctor against the most warlike species in the Whoniverse. It works really well. It's, on that level, it's a pretty simple setup, but like I say, it works. It's a good Doctor to have meet the Sontarans, and you're right, it's a very, very Ninth Doctor story. Mansoor, talk to us about Salvation 9.
Yeah, this is one of my favourites, and I just appreciate people doing something, or like finding something different to do with villains or characters that have been used a lot. Um, and I think this one really succeeded in doing that. And like, one of my initial thoughts was that it's a bit, well, this whole squeezing so many stories into this era for the Ninth Doctor is a bit of a an odd thing, because from what we know on TV, he experiences the Time War, is deeply traumatized, and then meets Rose. So how do you fit in adventures where he is like having fun, or like showing like emotion, but and he gets to like show a lot of like wonder and like humor and all of that in this episode, like his reaction to the new way that Centaurans are reproducing and all of that was yeah, a nice change. And like what you're saying just then about like it fitting with that thread about pacifism, it makes sense of it because yeah, so if someone has been deeply traumatized by an experience like that, they might be like even more like positive when they see stuff that like yeah, that sort of shows them a different way, or like shows them someone being redeemed. So yeah, I thought it was fun and did something different with like a well established monster, and yeah, just as a story, it was just structured well as well. Like, and yeah, walked that line between being completely silly and actually still having like a bit of an element of threat and danger, and so that the whole kind of caper plan at the end does feel like it has some stakes while also being like intentionally ridiculous in some respects. So yeah, really successful story, I thought.
And it's, for some reason, I didn't remember this series as being. I didn't remember it as being bad, but I didn't remember it as being particularly standout. But Old Lang Syne and this are both standout episodes. They're both really, really good. So I have to admit, I've completely reassessed it listening to it
They are. I don't think there's
again.
many. I don't think there's many bad episodes in this run. I did feel like
Yeah.
there were quite a few that were like okay to good, but like you say, these two we've just spoken about, I think those two are excellent. I kind of feel like with the whole Ninth Doctor's run, you could cherry pick a really strong 13 episode series, maybe even two. Because I feel like that's a bit of the theme for his series as a whole. Like, there's rarely anything that's awful. It's at least good, and then there are these like excellent little standouts here and there.
Yeah, the kind of, when re-listening, I'm finding that they're popping up and surprising me. And
Mm.
yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's listening to them as a series of 12 episodes as opposed to three every few months as I was on release. I just don't know. But either anyway, yeah, that's two episodes that didn't really shout out to me the first time round, and I really appreciated on re-listen. Next up then is Last of the Zeta Scene. And I mean, the first thing I've got to mention about this is Maureen O'Brien playing an absolutely fantastic villain. Slightly whimsy, this one, slightly sort of more on the humorous side. It's a very, very big Finnish story. We've had similar before, but this is good. This is solid. And like I said, Maureen O'Brien's great. Sort of a nice, strong, don't let species die out message in there, which is always good. Yeah, it's fun. This is the fun one of the set, and perhaps the fun one of the whole series. Actually, Connor, talk to us about Last of the Zeta Scene.
So, as you said, the main reason I wanted to talk about it was Maureen O'Brien is really bloody good in it. She is completely in. Quite often, I think you get companions who come in. This happened a lot in the early days of Big Finish, where old companions came in and played new roles, and it's always in the back of your head that, oh, this is Deborah Watling playing this space station commander, or it's always in the back of your head that this person used to play a companion. I do not have that in this because her performance is so completely unlike Vicky. She's a really nasty piece of work, actually. Her character in this, I think all of that little criminal gang, all those characters are really well drawn, and they're all big personalities as well. So, well written, well performed, and it's a really I really enjoy just sort of fun standalone hours of Big Finish. That if I have if I just want to pop something on quickly to listen to, you get that complete story. You're not, it's not part of a series. It's just a fun hour of Doctor Who. I think this falls into this category. Um, So it does, and I always really enjoy hearing it back. It's not the most groundbreaking story in the world. It's not the most innovative story in the world. But it's fun and it has that really, really fantastic. I've done it again. I didn't even mean to. Um, it has that really standout performance from Maureen O'Brien that sets the story that step above uh, what it might have been otherwise if she hadn't been in that role.
Maureen O'Brien, absolutely fantastic. And obviously, she went on to play sort of the main villain in Once and Future as well, and that sort of worked out quite nicely. That so yeah, she makes a good villain. She makes a great Vicky, but she makes a good villain. Anything you want to add about this one, Mansoor?
I got to admit, I didn't actually look at the cast list for any of these, and I'm very bad with recognizing voices, and I didn't realize it was her. But it is again like a nice little nostalgic link back to those very first Big Finish plays where you had like Elizabeth Sladen and others, Nicholas Courtney, even before the Doctor Who license, playing completely different characters in like the Bernice audios, the very first few. So it's always nice when that happens, and I imagine these actors appreciate that as well. That if they've been doing the same characters and that's what they're most well known for, I imagine they really appreciate the opportunity to just let loose and do something completely different. Um, but yeah, decent enough story. Was fun. Um, this is one that I would put in that kind of like good solid range of stories. Like not one of my absolute favorites of this run, but yeah, one of the better ones.
Well, to round it off, let's talk about the next story from this set. So we've actually talked about the whole set, obviously a strong set, but the next one is Break the Ice, which is a bit of a horror story. Like the villain is Jack Frost, and he's eerie as hell. This one works. This one is nice and creepy, and I think Jack Frost makes a brilliant villain. Sort of the whole idea of one of those villains that's slightly bigger, a little bit more godlike. It kind of plays with concepts that the series has played with, TV series has played with recently, and Big Finish has definitely flirted with plenty of times before. Yeah, absolutely fantastic, and I kind of wish there was slightly more in the way of stories like this. Like it keeps you engaged. The atmosphere is nice and strong. It certainly creeps you out a bit, and like there are some pretty grim deaths for characters in this, sort of slowly getting frozen to death bit by bit, and that kind of thing. It's one that doesn't hold back, and then there's that sort of post titles at the end that kind of very heavily implies Jack Frost is not properly defeated. He's still around. So yeah, I like this one. This is a strong one. Connor, what about you? What do you think?
It is a strong one, and as you say, it's very similar territory to what the TV series has done over the last couple of years. If this had been on TV, Jack Frost would have done the giggle at some point. He'd have been part of that pantheon. So yes, I really really enjoy it. I think whenever the Ninth Doctor adventure started up, one of my most wanted things from it was Christmas specials or Christmas stories, because the Ninth Doctor, like, obviously had the Unquiet Dead, which is sort of, I can't remember if it's set at Christmas or if it's just a winter story, but um, he never got a Christmas special as such. So I really wanted some Ninth Doctor stuff that I could put on around Christmas time, and this falls into it because this is like it is set at Christmas. Um, so I really, really enjoyed it. Jack Frost is a fantastic villain, and it's a really great performance. Again, it's a big personality for the Doctor to confront, and I think that's one of the highlights of the Ninth Doctor adventures for me. As I said, like I mentioned earlier on, when he's facing down the Grue, happens again here where he's facing off with Jack Frost. The Ninth Doctor does really well at face to face confrontations with a really big personality, of a villain like this. So I think that works really, really well. It's a little bit sort of, it's almost a little bit like Die Hard in Space, where you've got, you know, they're going through this creaking, collapsing space station. And there's a wee bit of a survival. You mentioned it being a horror story, and it is, but I think there's a bit of a survival element to it as well, which is I always really, really enjoy. Um, so I think it's great, and I hope that post credit scene does get followed up on. I would like to see the Ninth Doctor and Rose going up against Jack Frost in the new series that's coming out now over the next couple of years. Um, I get the impression that maybe that's not on the cards. That maybe this was just Jack Frost is a force of nature. He's in every snowflake. He is still out there somewhere. You can't defeat that sort of evil. But I would like it to be followed up on. I think it would be pretty cool to have because the Ninth Doctor now does have two eras. There's this companionless era, and then there's the Rose era. I think it would be a nice way to link those together. By having the Ninth Doctor and Rose face off against this villain from one of his solo stories. I would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think if there's anything from these three series of pre-Rose Ninth Doctor adventures that deserves a sequel, particularly with the Ninth Doctor, this would be the one. Absolutely. Mansoor, what do you think?
I mean, just like picking up on that, I wonder if it has to be the Ninth Doctor, because we were saying before we've got these two new series Doctor ranges alternating now, Ninth Doctor and 13th. Maybe it could be a sequel in the 13th Doctor's range. But I thought the whole gods thing was interesting. I think I liked it on its own as a story. But it's like a little bit of a kind of an aberration for that era, because I don't like if this. I don't know if this story would have fitted well with the time, because like we were saying earlier, you have this like such a grounded approach to the 2005 series. I've just been rewatching it with a friend who's watching it for the first time, and like I forgot how much of like Jackie's character is fleshed out, like and not just like unambiguously nice things. It's like all sorts of like edges to her that are introduced, and it's very, very tied to the powerless state and all of those things. As we said, this story would have fitted really well on TV in the last couple of years. So there's that thing. But actually, I do say as well that like Big Finish shouldn't just slavishly ape the era that they're setting a story in. It can be good to like play around with things and do a tone or do a type of story that wouldn't have been on TV, but is still a good, interesting story to do. So yeah, I like this one, but then there's almost a potential there for not just a sequel, but there could be a whole run or a couple of box sets that do like an arc about gods and more powerful beings. We kind of had that with like in the early days with the Seventh Doctor and Ace and Hex. There were bits of it coming in then. I think that could be really interesting to do a couple of box sets on. It's kind of been done on TV now, but like to do like a pantheon of gods, and maybe audio would be the medium to actually do that more successfully, to have a bit of space to develop those more complex Neil Gaiman type ideas about what these personified gods and beings are. So yeah, coming back to the story, decent enough story. Just some observations about how it fits or doesn't fit with that 2005 series tone.
I think I mean, the whole range, but I think this series in particular is very good at doing stories that you could immediately just slot into series one and they are just a Ninth Doctor story that could have been on telly in 2005. And then there's stuff that really couldn't, that's very different, and that Big Finish are doing now. And it does balance that quite well, I think. I think this next one would never have got anywhere near TV in 2005. That's The Seas of Titan. Mainly because it's a proper nostalgic let's meet the Sea Devils, and it's quite a nice traditional Sea Devil story. I think it doesn't do anything big or wild with them. I guess the twist is they're in space and not on Earth, but otherwise it's familiar Sea Devil territory. Connor, you wanted to talk about this one, so go ahead.
Yes, you're right. It is very familiar territory. So I don't think this is a story that I can sing the praises of. It's a story that comes very close to doing something that I've wanted from the Sea Devils and the Silurians for ages, but I still walk away feeling a little bit unsatisfied by it, and I wanted to talk through that. So, um, yes, you're getting the Sea Devils in space, which I think is cool. I like that sort of idea of the human race going out into the stars, and we get these Silurian and Sea Devil conflicts on Earth. We know the Silurians were a spacefaring species as well. So I think it's always bound to happen that the humans are going to go out and settle this planet, or settle some planet, and it turns out that the Silurians they got there first as well, and that same old conflict is going to play out. So that happens here, but it is just the same story playing out on an alien world. There's nothing fundamentally different about the conflict between the human race and the Sea Devils in this case. It does something else that I've wanted for a while, which is, peace is achieved towards the end of this, where the humans and the Sea Devils do ultimately set aside their differences, and they do agree to support one another. But it feels very perfunctory, and again, I don't know that I'm completely satisfied by it. So this story it had more potential than it sort of lived up to, I think. And I find it frustrating in that sense. It is one that I listen to, not regularly, but I do come back to it as one of those standalone hours of Doctor Who that I mentioned. When I have a spare hour and I want to listen to something, this would be on that list that I would pick from for it. But I just don't think it reaches its full potential. It has the opportunity to tell a new type of Silurian / Sea Devil story, but it is just so many familiar plot beats played out, and then the obvious solution at the end plays out, and it's not in a. It feels like it could have been more interesting than it actually was. I think. I think it was. I think I would consider it a missed opportunity. Unfortunately.
I think that goes for like so many Silurian and Sea Devil stories since the original TV ones. It's and maybe this is our fault for having consumed so much extended media Doctor Who, but like, and there's a similar problem with the Daleks as well. But like, yeah, I had exactly the same thing. I feel like I've heard variations on this story so many times before. There are some interesting changes, but as you say, they're quite surface level of like, let's set it in space and different context, but the beats are the same. The thing it made me think of was like the war between the land and the sea, and my mind just sort of drifted to that and thinking, oh, I hope they do something interesting with the Sea Devils. And I don't know if it's a sort of naive hope, but I feel like the war between the land and the sea could be this weird little interesting end to the Disney era that like quietly comes out after the main show is wrapped up. Because I suspect Russell T Davies is going to do something more interesting than rehashing the 70s TV stories.
It's a curious one because Silurians and Sea Devils are so closely tied to a moral dilemma that you can't really take that moral dilemma away. And I don't think any writer actually has. You can have them at various points on the moral dilemma. You can have them at the we want to talk stage, or you can have them at the we've talked and it's not worked, so now we're at war stage. But they're always going to be tied to that sort of coexistence idea. And there's only so much ground that can be covered by it. But if you take that away, they're just monsters without any real purpose. And we've got other monsters that kind of have that built into their DNA, and it works well because that's what you expect from them. So yeah, it's Silurians and Sea Devils. It's always a little bit of a cul-de-sac in terms of what can be done with them. You always sort of just come round to the same thing, and I don't really think anything else would work. Um, you can do the concept well, you can do the concept not so well, and I
I,
guess that's
I
how
would
it's measured. But yeah,
I would genuinely love them to portray that coexistence, though. I would love for at some stage the TARDIS lands on some spaceship um, in the far future, and the spaceship's a sort of mishmash of human and Silurian, human mechanical and Silurian organic technology, and the crew is a mix as well. Where it's humans and Silurians on the same crew, and it's sort of set after the unification because these two species are going out into space, the humans and the Silurians. If that battle between them is going to play out on a new planet, you have taken away the core of that conflict, which is they're fighting over the
It's
Earth.
Earth, isn't it? Yeah.
It is about the Earth, but once those two species go out into space, we are effectively the same. We come from the same planet. We are, that difference is suddenly gone. So I would like to see the outcome of that. I'm not sure whether I want to see the conflict play out and be resolved, but I do think it would be a cool element, even just from a world building point of view, that once you go far enough into the future, human colonies or Earth colonies are a mixture of human and Silurian. I think that would be a really cool idea to play out with.
And there's a thread just hanging there because there was that Matt Smith story where the humans um, go into like get frozen with the Silurians. So you've got like those characters that I mean, a lot of time has passed, so like casual viewers probably don't remember them, but you've got that thread that you could pick up on, like go a few thousand years into the future and what happens when they unfreeze. Yeah, you're right about like losing that element of it as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if this was like explicitly on the mind of like the producers or writers in the 70s. But there's that whole thing of the Silurians being basically like the indigenous people, and you completely lose that if you're out and you're not on their sort of ancestral home. Um, so yeah, it's the novels had an interesting approach where they didn't foreground some huge like earth shattering moral dilemma. They just had ice warriors and Silurians kind of just pop up as supporting characters sometimes and like be friends of Bernice or guests at her wedding. And um, so that's another approach. It's just to like just when you do a story in the future, you just see these these species just interacting in a different way.
so it can be done. I mean, I really like Connor's concept of let's just put them in the middle ground, or let's have a society that works, and have some upstart youth that hates it all and thinks they should be segregated and that kind of thing. There's ground to explore there, I suppose. Yeah,
Or
but
a common enemy, maybe. Like that's
yeah,
the other thing.
yeah.
Like why does it always have to be humanity versus Silurians? Could it be some sort of again? You just see them working together, and there's some other external threat.
You get that impression, like in something like, say, uh, Doomsday. Like how many times has the Earth been invaded? Like, say, the Stolen Earth, the Daleks are invading. Why aren't the Silurians coming up out of their caves to fight against the Daleks as well? That would be quite cool, actually. as you say, a common enemy, or if we're having to fight to save the Earth, why aren't the Silurians joining in? Since that's the core, as we say, of the conflict is both species love and want the Earth. Why aren't both sides coming out to defend it in one of these scenarios?
Yeah, there's limited mileage in like alternative universe stories because like how do you get invested in alternative versions of characters and so on. But like one of my favorite New Adventures novels was they were being bounced around different alternative realities, and one of them was an Earth where the Silurians didn't oversleep, and they are still the dominant species on Earth. Um, so I think there are like interesting ideas and approaches and stories you can tell that just that don't hit those same beats again.
I definitely need to explore the New Adventures, Missing Adventures a bit more, because that does actually sound rather interesting. And I think the story you're referring to is Blood Heat, isn't it? Which has been...
I think it kicked off the cycle, if I'm remembering. There was like 5 alternative universe books.
Yeah, it's one that's definitely on my radar. I might give it a go at some point. Okay, well, we appear to have run out of time, and we've still got near enough half a series of Ninth Doctor adventures to talk about. So I think we're going to have to come back for a part 2. We're getting a second, like Eccleston didn't originally.
That joke never, ever, ever gets old.
Couldn't resist. I thought it'd be a fantastic joke.
I would like anyone who's listening to this to go through and count up how many Fantastics we've done across the 2 episodes and tweet them to us. Or, well, not tweet them. We don't tweet anymore. We don't use that.
We do not tweet. Blue Sky them to us, or thread them to us, or Instagram them to us, Facebook them to us, but yes, because there's been a lot of Fantastic, mainly because of you.
Yes, it's my fault.
Yeah, obviously. Right, well, we shall leave it there then. But yeah, we'll return very soon and discuss the second part of this series, and perhaps look forward to the third, and indeed look forward to the new series, Ninth Doctor and Rose, that's relatively imminent. It's next month. It's not too far off, which is all rather quite exciting. So in the meantime, I will say goodbye to Connor.
Thank you very much.
And goodbye to Mansoor.
Goodbye for now.
And we'll be back for more podcasting very soon. Goodbye now.